It started with the usual curiosity. I had heard about the dark web for years, just like everyone else. People talked about it in hushed voices, warning others not to go there. But me, I couldn't resist. I had to see for myself. The deep web, the dark web, it was like an irresistible call, luring me in with the promise of hidden knowledge and forbidden content. And let's be honest, I thought I could handle it. I thought I was smarter than the people who got caught in its grip. I didn't have much of a reason for going there at first. It was a random night. My laptop was open and I was scrolling through forums. I don't know what led me to search for it, but one minute I was reading about tech tips, and the next minute I was on a forum dedicated to deep web access. It was the same as I had read about: hidden servers, anonymous browsing, untraceable links. You've probably heard of it. The part of the internet where all the illegal stuff happens, where you can find anything: drugs, hacking services, illegal porn, and even contract killers for hire. I didn't intend to go any deeper than that. I wasn't that kind of person. I was curious, sure, but cautious. I clicked on a link just to see what was there. Nothing illegal, nothing criminal, just a forum with a bunch of encrypted posts, threads on topics I couldn't quite understand. But then there was something about a post buried deep within an obscure subforum. It wasn't about anything illegal, just a story, a dark story, a chilling one. It was titled, "I Saw Something on the Dark Web and Now It Won't Leave Me Alone." The post itself was unremarkable. It was written in a thread where people shared weird or paranormal experiences. This wasn't something out of the ordinary. People on these boards were always sharing strange encounters, eerie happenings, and bizarre occurrences that were somehow tied to the dark web. But this one felt different. It wasn't about a ghost or a demon. It wasn't about some maniac following the writer around. It was far more unsettling. The author claimed that they had stumbled across a hidden chat room. It wasn't a forum, and it wasn't a traditional online meeting place. The chat room was different, the writer said. It was active in a way that didn't make sense. The messages would come through so quickly that it felt like the room was alive, breathing, pulsing with energy. But there was one thing that stood out. The messages weren't from people. Not real people, anyway. The writer went on to explain how they'd been in the chat for only a few minutes before something odd happened. At first, it was just words appearing on the screen, things like "hello," "are you watching?" and then a sudden series of numbers and letters that made no sense. They assumed it was just a glitch or a joke, maybe some kind of bot. But as the messages continued, it became clear that they were communicating with something not human. I should have stopped reading right there, but I didn't. I kept going. The more the original poster, OP, engaged with the chat, the more disturbing it became. Strange symbols flashed across their screen, and words began forming in front of them that felt wrong. They said the words felt wrong because they were things they couldn't comprehend, not just in a linguistic sense, but also in a visceral way. Something deep inside them screamed that this wasn't just an error. This was something alive, something ancient. And then came the final message. It was just a series of numbers followed by the chilling statement, "I'm watching you now." The post ended there. No more words, just that sentence. I remember feeling a cold chill run down my spine. I should have logged off immediately. I should have closed the browser, erased everything, and maybe even thrown my laptop in the trash. But I didn't. I stayed there, staring at the screen, and that was my first mistake. After reading the post, I thought I was safe. I didn't expect anything to happen. I didn't think the dark web would come for me. Why would it? I wasn't doing anything wrong. But what happened next, that's when I realized I had made a terrible mistake. That night, I went to bed feeling uneasy, but it was more of an abstract unease, the kind of thing that you can dismiss by rationalizing it, saying, "I'm just tired, just imagining things." That is, until I woke up. It was around 3 a.m., the time when everything seems too quiet, the kind of silence that makes you feel like something is off. My phone buzzed on the nightstand, waking me up. I rolled over and checked it. A strange number, unfamiliar but not foreign, just wrong. I clicked it. There was a message, but it wasn't from anyone I knew. It was simple, like the first part of that post, just a sentence. "I'm still watching." I should have panicked. I should have thrown my phone across the room. But all I could think was, how did they get my number? I deleted the message. I deleted the contact. But it didn't matter. For the next few days, I would receive those same cryptic messages. They would appear in the middle of the night, just after I'd doze off. The content was always the same. I see you. I know where you are. I'm waiting. I couldn't stop it. I tried blocking numbers, changing my contact information, but it never stopped. I tried uninstalling every app, every program, every software that could possibly be connected. I even reset my phone, hoping it would work. But then it started happening with my laptop. The screen would flicker, turning on by itself in the middle of the night. When I opened it, I'd see the same messages. Come back to the chat. You're not safe. You can't escape me. Then the photos started. They were taken from inside my house. I'd find them in random files on my computer. Photos of me while I slept. One night, there was a photo of me standing in my kitchen with no memory of it at all. Another time, it was a shot of me sitting at my desk just after I'd closed my laptop, looking down at my hands as if waiting for something. The fear set in. I couldn't go anywhere without feeling like someone was watching me. The walls felt like they were closing in. I even started seeing shadows at the edges of my vision, too fast to be real, but too real to ignore. I'd hear things, whispers, coming from the dark corners of my room. I would hear my name, soft, barely a murmur, but loud enough to make my heart stop. I was being hunted, I knew that much. But by what or who, I couldn't understand. I didn't know who or what was doing this to me. But there was one thing I knew for sure. It was because of that stupid click. That stupid, dangerous thread. Eventually, it became unbearable. I couldn't sleep. I couldn't eat. I was a mess. Losing weight. Losing time. I became paranoid, certain that I was being followed every time I left the house. I'd constantly check over my shoulder, convinced someone was right behind me. And then one day, it finally happened. I was sitting in my living room when the doorbell rang. I wasn't expecting anyone. I looked through the peephole, and there was no one there. But when I opened the door, there was a box. It was small, unmarked. I could feel my pulse racing as I picked it up. Inside was nothing but a black, broken USB drive. I plugged it into my laptop, too terrified to refuse, desperate to know what would happen next. The screen flickered for a moment, and then it went black. And there, on the screen, was a message. I told you, you couldn't escape. It was followed by a grainy image, an image of me. From the outside of my house, standing there looking at the camera. I never left my house. No one had been outside. But there it was. And that was the moment I knew. There was no escape. I don't know what the thing in the dark web was. I don't know if it's still watching me now. But if you're reading this, don't go to the dark web. Don't be curious. Don't click on the wrong link. Because once it starts, there's no stopping it. It won't stop.
Next story.
I'm not proud of what I did. But it started out innocently enough, right? Just a bit of curiosity. I've always been a tech nerd. Grew up with computers, always tinkering, always wanting to know what makes things tick. The internet, to me, was a treasure trove, and I'd spent years exploring the deep web. Not the dark web, no, I wasn't stupid enough for that, but the deep web, you know? Hidden forums, obscure blogs, strange videos, and discussions in corners most people would never think to look. That was my realm. One day, while searching through an old encrypted forum about internet security, I came across a link. The URL was odd, a string of random numbers and letters, and something about it felt different. My gut told me to close the tab, but my fingers couldn't stop. You know the feeling, right? That pull. The thing that says, what's the worst that could happen? I clicked. The page loaded with an eerie black background and a single line of text. Welcome, seeker. What you seek, you will find. I blinked and frowned. There was no heading, no logo, just that ominous message. Below it was a simple button that said, Enter. I didn't click it right away. My mouse hovered over it, fingers trembling. I glanced at the clock, 2:15 a.m. A perfect time for something creepy, I thought. I'd been up for hours, digging through obscure corners of the web. This was nothing more than a weird rabbit hole. So I clicked. The screen blinked, and the page changed. This time, it was a full screen of black with only a small, flickering green cursor in the center. I almost expected the page to freeze up, but it didn't. After a few seconds, a new line of text appeared. What are you afraid of? I sat there, stunned. What kind of question was that? I shifted in my chair, uncomfortable. I thought for a second. Was it a joke? Maybe a test to see if I was brave enough to keep going? Whatever it was, I wasn't going to be outdone. I typed a response, keeping it vague. Death. Almost instantly, the text changed. Good. The first step is admitting your fear. The cursor blinked again, and I felt the hairs on the back of my neck stand up. I didn't want to keep going, but I couldn't stop myself. I typed, "What now?" The page seemed to load again, and this time the words were followed by something else. A link. I wasn't sure what I was expecting, but the link led to a new page that looked like a stream, a dark, grainy video feed. At first, I thought it was broken. But then, as my eyes adjusted to the darkness of the screen, I saw shapes moving, figures, human-like shapes in some kind of dark room. I leaned forward, squinting at the screen. It was difficult to make out any details. The figures were too blurry, too faint, like shadows in the periphery of my vision. But one thing was clear. They were not alone. The figures were whispering to each other in soft, unsettling voices. The sound was distorted, like the feed was broken. The only thing clearer than their faces was the fear in their eyes. They knew something, and I had the feeling they weren't supposed to be there. That was when the message appeared on the screen. You've unlocked the first level. You're ready. Ready for what? I didn't know. I should have known. Something in my gut told me to turn off the computer, to disconnect from whatever I'd found, but my curiosity overpowered the fear. The whispers on the screen continued to grow louder, more frantic, but I couldn't look away. Before I could react, the video feed cut out and the screen went black. And then, in the corner of the page, something new appeared. A chat box. A name typed something to me. "Do you want to see what happens next?" I froze. There was no way anyone else could be in there. No way anyone was watching me. But something about the message, the way it was worded, the way it seemed to know what I was thinking, made the hairs on my arms prickle. I hesitated before typing anything. I didn't have to say anything. The cursor moved on its own and typed for me. Yes. The screen blinked again, and suddenly, I was looking at something I didn't recognize. A room, dimly lit by a single bulb hanging from the ceiling. The walls were cracked and covered in strange symbols that seemed to shift if you stared at them for too long. A man was sitting in the middle of the room, shackled to a chair, his eyes wide with terror. His clothes were torn, bloodied, as if he'd been through hell. His lips were moving, but no sound came from the speakers. The man's eyes locked onto the camera for a split second before he screamed, a silent scream, and then the feed cut to black again. I shook my head, trying to make sense of what I had just seen. What kind of sick joke was this? Was it just some disturbing prank? I didn't know, but I couldn't stop watching. I couldn't tear my eyes away. The next thing I knew, the screen flashed once more. But this time, it was different. The message that appeared wasn't from the chat. It wasn't a message at all. It was a picture. A grainy, pixelated image of a woman, her face half obscured by dark hair, her eyes wide open in terror, her hands held out as if reaching for something. And then the text below the image changed. "She's waiting for you." I recoiled, heart racing. What the hell was going on? My fingers froze over the keyboard. "What do you want from me?" I typed, my hands shaking. The reply was instant. "Everything." Before I could even process that, the room's lights flickered. I could feel the temperature in my apartment drop, like something had entered the room with me. A chill that made my breath come out in mist, like I was suddenly outside on a winter's night. My laptop screen flickered again, and the room around me seemed to pulse with a low, vibrating hum. I tried to close the browser, tried to turn off my computer, but my hand refused to move. I was paralyzed. The screen stayed frozen on the image of the woman, her eyes staring through me. And then, with a sudden surge, the screen went black. For a split second, I thought I could hear something, a soft, distant whisper from behind me. I turned in my chair, but there was nothing there, just my dark living room. I laughed nervously, trying to shake off the unease. But when I turned back to the screen, something was different. The woman's face had changed. Her mouth was wide open now, as if she was screaming. The black screen had transformed into something else, something terrifying. I felt it then. The presence, like something was looming over my shoulder, watching me. My heart pounded in my chest as I scrambled to close the tab, but the screen wouldn't let me. I tried to force the computer to shut down, but nothing responded. The cursor blinked again, this time with an urgency that made my stomach churn. Then the chat box popped up again. The same words appeared. Do you want to see the end? I didn't respond. I couldn't. We're already here. And then the screen blinked. I saw it. It wasn't a video anymore. It wasn't a picture. It was real. The room I was sitting in, the same dark space around me, was reflected on the screen, but the image was twisted. The woman from the image was there, standing in my living room, her eyes locked on mine. She whispered my name. It was so quiet, so low, that I couldn't tell if it was coming from the screen or from behind me. But I didn't turn around. I couldn't. I couldn't even breathe.
Next story.
I don't know where to begin. Maybe I should start with the fact that I was curious, too curious for my own good. It all began when I stumbled across an online forum about the dark web, a place I had heard about in passing but never fully understood. There were threads, some chilling, some cryptic, but most of them were just stories. And then one night I saw a post titled, "Real Ghosts of the Dark Web." I clicked on it thinking it was just another scare tactic, another attempt at clicking bait. But as I read, the words started to disturb me. The post was about people who had gone deep into the dark web, accessing sites no one was meant to see. They talked about things, strange things, that made me feel like I was reading about a nightmare. Things that, at the time, felt more like urban legends than truth. But I was wrong. The first time I went looking, I didn't expect to find much. I had downloaded a few tools, followed some tutorials, and prepared myself to enter a world I thought was mostly just shadowy nonsense. I had always been a thrill seeker, drawn to danger in small doses, so the idea of exploring something forbidden felt like an exciting challenge. I didn't know what I was getting into. It wasn't long before I came across a site. I don't remember the URL, but I remember the layout. It was a deep black screen, the text barely visible in the dim red font. The homepage said, "Visitors welcome." I thought it was just some dumb hacker page. Maybe it was a test, maybe it was a joke. But the longer I stared at it, the more it felt wrong. And I should have clicked away right then. But I didn't. I clicked on the link that said "Ghosts from the Beyond." When the page loaded, my screen flickered, and for a moment, I thought the computer had frozen. Then something strange happened. I heard a voice, a low, distorted whisper. It wasn't coming from my speakers, it was like it was inside my head. It was a language I didn't understand, but somehow I knew it was pleading, begging for help. And then the screen showed something that made my heart stop. There was a video, a grainy, distorted image of a person tied to a chair, their face unrecognizable due to the distortion. The whispers grew louder, more desperate. The person on the screen began to twitch, their eyes rolling back in their head as though they were possessed. I should have stopped. I should have closed the tab, deleted everything, and walked away. But no, I couldn't look away. The video played on its own, and then the screen changed. It was another video. This one was different. It wasn't a person. It was something else. A shadowy figure moved slowly across a dark room. It had no face, no form, just a black void that seemed to swallow the light around it. And then it spoke. It didn't speak in words. It spoke in a guttural sound, like the grinding of old, broken machinery. I couldn't understand it, but I felt it, deep in my chest, in my bones. It wasn't human. It wasn't anything I had ever known. The figure reached out, its hands stretching unnaturally far, and for the briefest second, I thought it saw me. I don't know why I stayed, but I did. I couldn't look away. That's when things started to get weird. At first, it was just the occasional glitch, the flickering screen, the strange noises coming from my headphones. But over the next few days, it escalated. My computer began to malfunction. Files disappeared, folders I had never created appeared, filled with videos, photos, and messages that made no sense. Some of them were recordings of myself taken while I was asleep, or worse, when I was alone in my room. I tried to dismiss it. I thought it was a virus, some malware that I had unknowingly downloaded. But that was before I received the message. It came in the middle of the night when I was scrolling mindlessly through my phone. It was a simple text message, nothing more than a phone number I didn't recognize. I almost ignored it, thinking it was spam, but then the message itself made me freeze. It simply read, "We know you watched. Now we're coming." That's when the fear set in. It was no longer a game. It was real. Something or someone was watching me. I tried to block the number, delete the message, but every time I looked away, it came back. And then the calls started. At first, they were just silent, no one on the other end. But eventually, the voice returned, that same distorted whisper. I couldn't make out the words, but I could feel it. I could feel it in my gut. It was coming closer. The worst part? It wasn't just happening to me anymore. I started to hear things. Strange noises at night, footsteps when no one was there, the creaking of the floorboards in the hallway. I'd wake up to find the doors unlocked, the lights turned on, and my computer on, displaying those same cursed images. But there was something else. Something new. I saw it. In the reflection of my window, in the corner of the room, in the glass of my bathroom mirror, I saw it watching me. It was always just a fleeting glimpse, but I saw it. That same shadowy figure, its face hidden in darkness, just waiting. And it wasn't just watching. It was waiting for me to make a mistake, to let my guard down. And every time I thought I had escaped, every time I thought I could breathe again, it was still there. But the worst thing, it wasn't just following me, it was changing me. I began to feel things, emotions that weren't my own, a coldness in my chest, a constant weight pressing down on me. I couldn't escape the feeling of being followed, even when I was alone in my apartment. The whispers grew louder, clearer. Sometimes I'd wake up to find my computer on mistake showing the same video of that person tied to the chair. But this time, there was a message written across the screen. Your turn is coming. I didn't know who was behind it, who was pulling the strings, but it didn't matter. It didn't matter, because I was already caught. The dark web had found me. I had seen things I wasn't supposed to see, and now I was part of it. I couldn't get away. A few nights ago, I made the mistake of searching the site again. The same black screen, the same text, but this time, the video wasn't the same. It was a new video. It showed me. It showed me sitting at my desk, the very same one I had met moments before. But it wasn't me, not fully. The person in the video had the same face, but their eyes, they were hollow, empty. I stared at the screen, and that's when I heard it, the whisper. This time, it wasn't a warning. It was a command. Join us. I looked around the room, my heart pounding, and that's when I saw it. It was standing in the doorway. I don't know how much time I have left. I can feel it closing in. I know it's only a matter of time before I'm pulled into whatever dark realm this is, before I become another part of its endless, twisted narrative. If you're reading this, don't make the same mistake I did. Don't go looking for the things that are hidden on the dark web, because once you see them, once you know they're real, you'll never escape.
Next story.
I don't know why I decided to dive into the dark web that night. Maybe it was boredom, maybe it was curiosity, but whatever it was, it ended up being the worst decision of my life. It all started innocently enough. I had heard so many stories, so many warnings about how dangerous the dark web could be, but at the time, it just seemed like some mystery, some forbidden zone where people indulged in unspeakable things. It wasn't until I read a random post on a forum about real ghost sightings on the dark web that my interest was piqued. The post itself was short, just a few lines of text that claimed certain hidden websites hosted ghost videos. Not the kind of videos you find on YouTube, where people fake paranormal events for views, but actual footage of spirits. Things that couldn't be explained. I thought it was all fake, but the idea still gnawed at me. I had a little bit of experience with the internet's darker corners. A few months before, I had made the mistake of buying into a cheap online deal that led me to a scam. This time, I promised myself I'd be careful. Still, I couldn't resist the pull of curiosity. I fired up my laptop, downloaded Tor, and began searching. The first few searches yielded nothing interesting. Most of the links were dead or just full of scam ads. But then I stumbled upon a website with a simple, ominous name, whispersfromthebeyond.com. No explanation, just a page with a dark background and a flickering red text that said, "Enter if you dare." My heart raced. For a moment I hesitated, but I thought, what's the worst that could happen? I clicked. The screen shifted, and a new page appeared. It was a video player, but unlike anything I had seen before. The resolution was grainy, flickering in and out like it had been recorded on an old VHS tape. In the center of the screen was a dark room, the kind of room where you couldn't tell if the shadows were moving or if it was just the lighting playing tricks. A faint, ghostly figure could be seen, standing motionless at the corner of the room. The voice that played next was low and distorted, like it was coming from somewhere deep underground. "Welcome, Seeker. You have found us. I froze. It was just a video, I told myself. Someone had probably edited this, created a creepy atmosphere. But the voice, it sounded so real, like it wasn't coming from the speakers, but from inside my head. Do you wish to know the truth? The voice whispered. At that moment, I couldn't look away. Something about the video gripped me. I clicked on the play button. The room in the video seemed to shift, the shadows moving as though they had a life of their own. Then, the figure in the corner stepped forward. It was like a person, but not. It had no distinct features, just a blur of shadow and movement. I could hear my heartbeat in my ears. Can you feel it? The voice said, and at that moment, my body went cold. I didn't know how to explain it, but it felt like the air around me had thickened. I turned to look behind me, but there was nothing. The room was empty. I told myself I was imagining things. The video continued. The figure in the corner moved closer to the camera, and I could see what it was holding in its hand, a photograph. It was a photo of a woman, though her face was scratched out. The figure held it up to the screen, then slowly its arm extended beyond the frame. Suddenly, the video cut to black. I felt a chill run down my spine. Just as I was about to click away, the screen flickered back to life. The distorted voice whispered again, "Your turn is coming." I didn't know what to make of it. Was this a prank? A hacker playing games with me? I closed the browser and turned off the laptop. My hands were shaking. That should have been the end of it. But it wasn't. The following day, I noticed strange things happening. Little things. The lights in my apartment flickered. My phone's battery would drain unusually fast, and I'd hear whispers when no one was around. At night, I'd wake up to see dark shadows in the corners of my room, figures that vanished the second I looked directly at them. I tried to ignore it, dismiss it as stress or sleep deprivation, but the unease grew stronger. Then came the messages. They started innocently enough, just a series of random numbers and symbols. It seemed like spam at first, but then I began to see a pattern. The messages grew more personal, more disturbing. They mentioned places I had been, things I had done. At first, I thought it was a coincidence, but soon I realized I was being watched. The worst part was the video. A few days after the initial encounter on the dark web, I received a link from an unknown email. The subject line simply read, "Your next encounter." My stomach twisted. I shouldn't have opened it, but curiosity won out. The video was identical to the first one I had seen, except this time the figure was standing in my apartment. It was like the room in the video mirrored my own, everything in place except the figure standing at the door, just like the night I had first clicked the link. It raised its hand, holding something, another photograph. The same woman's face, scratched out again. The whispers started in the background, louder this time. "You're not alone." I shut off the screen, heart racing, but the unease wouldn't leave. The shadows in my room grew darker, and I could feel something pressing in on me. Always just out of reach, but close enough to make my skin crawl. I didn't know what to do. The messages kept coming. The whispers kept getting louder. It was like they were following me, watching me from the shadows. I tried to delete everything, wipe my device clean, but nothing worked. The dark web had found its way into my life, and now I was trapped. The final message came 1 week after I first watched that cursed video. It was another photograph, this time a clear image of my face, taken as I sat at my desk, staring at the screen. My mouth was open, as if I had been screaming, but no sound had reached me. And the text that accompanied the photo read, "Welcome to the other side." I tried to tell myself it was a hoax. I tried to ignore it, but I can't. Every night now, I hear the whispers. Every corner of my room feels colder, darker. The figure is always there, lurking just beyond my sight, and sometimes when I turn too quickly, I think I see it. I don't know how much longer I have. If you find yourself on the dark web, just know one thing. Some things are meant to stay hidden, some things are meant to stay buried, and once you find them, you can never unsee them.
Next story.
I remember the first time I accessed the dark web like it was yesterday. It was a rainy night, one of those nights when everything felt too quiet, too still. My curiosity had gotten the better of me. I'd heard stories about it, of course, but part of me thought it was all just rumors. Still, I needed to see it for myself. I couldn't resist the pull any longer. I didn't expect much, honestly. I thought it would just be a lot of shady websites, illicit content, and strange cat rooms filled with bizarre characters. But that night, I stumbled across something I wasn't prepared for. I had been browsing through some sites, nothing too sinister, when I came across a link that promised to show something unusual. It wasn't illegal or scandalous, it was just labeled as a glimpse into the unknown. It intrigued me, and maybe that was my first mistake. I clicked on it. The page opened in a way that seemed almost too quick to be real. The design was basic, just a blank background with a small black box in the middle. Inside the box was a simple line of text: "Click here if you dare to see beyond the veil." It felt like an invitation I couldn't ignore. I clicked. The screen flickered for a moment, and then, without warning, I found myself staring at a live feed. It wasn't just a random video, though. It was a camera feed showing a dimly lit room. I could see a single chair in the center of the room, its back to the camera. It looked abandoned, but it wasn't. I thought it was a prank, or maybe some sort of hidden camera show. It wasn't until the chair moved that I realized this was something different. The figure that sat in the chair was completely motionless. Not even a twitch, not even a breath. The feed zoomed in slowly on the figure, and that's when I noticed the odd detail. The figure was wearing a mask with no eyes, just smooth, featureless black. I stared at the screen for what felt like hours, my heart pounding in my chest. I thought I should close it, but I couldn't bring myself to. I felt paralyzed, caught in some sort of trance, my mind trying to rationalize what I was seeing. Then came the voice. It was a soft whisper at first, like someone just barely speaking into a microphone. But as the voice grew louder, I could make out the words, "I can see you." My blood ran cold. The voice wasn't coming from the figure in the chair. It was coming from the screen itself, like the screen itself was alive. I shook my head, telling myself it was some kind of trick, a pre-recorded video. Maybe it was a hoax or some elaborate prank. But then, something strange happened. The figure in the chair turned its head. At that moment, I swear I could hear the sound of breathing coming from the speakers. It was slow, deliberate, almost mechanical. The figure tilted its head as if it could see me, like it was looking directly at me through the screen. "I see you," the voice repeated, this time clearer, more deliberate. I jumped back, scrambling to close the browser, but it wouldn't close. My hands shook as I tried to exit, but the mouse cursor wouldn't move. It was stuck on the screen. The camera feed zoomed in closer on the figure's face. I could see the mask now in full detail, its smooth, featureless surface reflecting the light in a way that made it seem almost alive, and then it spoke again. "I know who you are." My heart stopped. I felt a chill crawl up my spine, a dread that I had never known before. I didn't know how it could possibly know anything about me. I had never shared my personal information on any of these sites. But as I tried to pull myself together, I realized something even more horrifying. The figure was moving. Slowly, deliberately, it began to rise from the chair. It wasn't a person, not really. It was too stiff, too unnatural. Its movements were jerky, like the figure was being controlled by something other than itself. I finally managed to close the tab, my pulse racing, but I could still hear the voice. Faint, like an echo inside my head. "You're not safe." I didn't sleep that night, or the next. For days, the voice kept echoing in my mind, lingering like a shadow, haunting my thoughts. But that wasn't the worst part. A few days later, I started seeing things. It started small at first, glimpses of movement in my peripheral vision. I'd turn my head quickly, only to find nothing. But then the shadow started to grow. Late at night, I'd hear footsteps outside my door, but when I checked, no one would be there. Then, one morning, I woke up to find something on my desk. A small, black mask. The kind you might wear for a masquerade ball. Only this one was different. The surface was smooth, featureless, just like the one in the video. I didn't know how it got there. I didn't know who left it. But I couldn't ignore it. I could feel its presence, like the air around me was thick with something I couldn't explain. And soon, the whispers returned. "I'm here," the voice whispered softly. But now, it was no longer just in my mind. It was coming from the walls, the floor, the ceiling, everywhere. I tried to forget about the dark web to move on with my life, but the presence never left. It was always there, just out of sight. I couldn't escape the feeling that something was watching me, waiting for me to let my guard down. Then a week ago, I saw the figure again. It wasn't through my computer screen this time. It was standing in my living room, staring at me. The same black, featureless mask, the same jerky, unnatural movements. I froze, my heart thudding in my chest as the figure took a slow step toward me. It was like time had stopped. The room was suffocatingly quiet, except for the sound of my own heartbeat. It took another step, and then I heard it, louder now. "I'm here, and I'll never leave you." I ran. I bolted for the door, but it didn't matter. I could feel the presence closing in on me. It wasn't just a haunting, it was something else, something much darker, something I couldn't escape, no matter how hard I tried. And that's when I realized something that chills me to this day. The dark web isn't just a place, it's a doorway to something that watches, something that waits, something that knows you better than you know yourself. And once it sees you, once it knows you've entered, there's no way out, no matter how hard you try. I can hear it now, just outside my door. I'm still here.
Next story.
I don't think I'll ever be the same after what happened, and I'm terrified that this is just the beginning. Maybe you'll believe me. Maybe you won't. But this is my warning. Stay off the dark web. Don't think for 1 second that you can dabble in it and come out unscathed. It started a few weeks ago. I'd heard the rumors, seen the posts, read the warnings. The dark web, mysterious, dangerous, forbidden. People talked about it like it was some kind of secret society, a place where unspeakable things were exchanged, hidden away from prying eyes. I never really understood it, but then I came across a post on a random subreddit. "What's the scariest thing you've seen on the dark web?" The stories were wild. Snuff films, disappearances, illegal activities. But one comment caught my eye. It wasn't just a scary story, it was an invitation. If you're curious, go to this link. Trust me, you won't regret it. Now, normally, I would have ignored something like that. But I don't know what it was. It's like something in me snapped. I clicked the link. The website that opened was nothing special at first, just a plain black screen with a blinking cursor. There was no fancy design, no enticing words, just an empty, cold screen. I stared at it for a few moments, unsure of what I was supposed to do. My fingers hovered over the keyboard, itching to type something, but I couldn't bring myself to. And then, out of nowhere, the cursor started typing for me. "Welcome, you've made it." I froze. My heart skipped a beat. There was no way anyone could be controlling my screen remotely. This was impossible. I leaned forward, feeling a sickening curiosity take hold. Before I could think better of it, I typed back, "What is this place?" The screen flickered and a response appeared almost immediately. "The last place you'll ever be." I tried to shake it off. Maybe it was a prank. Maybe some kind of bot doing this. I took a deep breath and typed again, asking if there was anything to see or do here. There is only one rule: don't look back. Now, that was odd. I couldn't help but feel the weight of those words. I looked around my room, feeling an unease settle in my stomach. I was alone. The door was locked. The lights were dim. There was no reason I should feel like this. But then, as if the universe had decided to prove me wrong, the screen blinked once more. This time, the black screen was filled with an image, distorted at first, like it was trying to focus, but then it cleared up. I could see a room. It was dark, like mine. A man was sitting in a chair, tied up with ropes. His face was bruised, bloodshot eyes wide in terror. His body trembled, but what caught my attention was the room's walls. They weren't just plain. No, they were covered in symbols. Symbols I recognized from old horror books, symbols meant to summon things, to invite things into our world. I felt my stomach drop. I could almost hear the man's breath, his muffled gasps for air, and then the message appeared. "We know your fear. Do you want to see it?" I didn't know what to do. I wanted to close the browser, to break free, but I couldn't. I couldn't look away. I was stuck. Yes. My fingers typed the word before I even had a chance to think about it. Suddenly, the man on the screen began to scream. His mouth opened wide, but no sound came out. He struggled against the ropes, his eyes darting around the room in panic. I leaned in closer, trying to make sense of what was happening. Was this real? Was someone really being tortured? Then, from the shadows, something moved. A figure, tall and thin, stepped into the man's view. Its face was hidden under a hood, but I could see its hand reach out and grab the man by the throat, lifting him off the ground. His body went limp. And then, in a motion so quick I couldn't process it, the figure snapped his neck. The man's body slumped to the floor with a sickening thud. I recoiled, my hand trembling. The screen blinked again. "You are next." My heart raced. I felt a cold sweat run down my back. I tried to exit the page, but nothing worked. My computer was frozen. I slammed my fist on the keyboard in frustration. And then, a noise. It was so soft, I almost thought I imagined it. But it wasn't in my head. It was real. The sound was faint at first, like a soft scraping or dragging. I turned around quickly, my eyes scanning the dark corners of my room. The noise was coming from behind me. I was breathing heavily now, my eyes darting from one shadow to the next. There was nothing there. Nothing but the quiet hum of my laptop. Then it happened. The chair in the corner of my room, the one I always kept by my desk, moved. Slowly, like something was shifting in the dark. My heart hammered in my chest as I watched the chair creak. Something was in my room. It was moving. I jumped out of my seat, backing up against the wall. My fingers flew to my phone, and I dialed 911 without thinking. But the moment I hit the call button, the lights flickered. Everything went black. I was plunged into darkness. I could hear my own breathing, shallow and panicked. Then I heard it, the faintest whisper. It was coming from behind me, right near my ear. "Don't look back." I whipped around, but the room was empty. Nothing but the shadows. But I knew something was there. Something wrong. The room stayed dark for what felt like an eternity. My phone was useless. The 911 call never went through. I sat frozen in the dark, waiting for whatever was coming. Then the lights flickered back on and I was alone. The room was still. The chair was back in its place, unmoved, but I could feel the cold presence still lingering. I could feel it watching me. I didn't sleep that night, or the night after. Every creak in the floor, every gust of wind, every small sound sent my heart racing. I couldn't shake the feeling that whatever was in that room on the screen had followed me into my own. I tried to delete the link. I tried to shut down everything I'd seen. But it didn't matter. That night, I got a message on my phone. It was a text from an unknown number. "You're still watching, aren't you? Don't look back." I haven't gone on the dark web since. I haven't even tried to check anything out, but the feeling, it never goes away. It lingers, always in the corner of my mind. And every night as I try to sleep, I hear a whisper. "Don't look back."
Next story.
It started out as an experiment. Nothing more. I didn't expect to find anything unusual, and I certainly didn't expect it to change my life forever. But here I am, telling you my story and wishing I could go back to that night and just turn my computer off. But I didn't. I made the mistake of clicking that link. It was a Tuesday, and I had just come across a strange thread on a message board I frequented. It wasn't anything special, just another discussion about the dark web. People were sharing their horror stories, and some of the posts piqued my interest. Most of it was about hackers, scams, and illegal content. But there was one post that caught my attention. The title read, "I found something that shouldn't exist on the dark web." I thought it was just another exaggerated title, but I clicked anyway. I had to know what it was. The post was long, detailing the author's experiences after stumbling upon a link on the dark web that led to a hidden site. The author claimed that the site was unlike anything they'd ever seen, a place that didn't fit with anything the dark web was supposed to represent. The more they wrote, the more I felt a strange sense of dread building up inside me. It wasn't just the content that was terrifying, it was the way the author described the feeling of being watched. The author mentioned how the site had no URL, no name, no address. It just appeared on their screen without warning, like it had been waiting for them to find it. The post ended with one chilling sentence: "I should have never clicked on it. It's still watching me." At that moment, I had no idea what I was getting myself into. But I was curious. Too curious. I fired up my Tor browser, convinced that nothing could happen to me. After all, I had used Tor before. I was a cautious person, always careful not to venture into the dangerous parts of the internet. But this was different. I didn't know what I was searching for, but my fingers typed out a few cryptic words that were hinted at in the post. Nothing specific, just vague terms that seemed like they belonged in some ancient ritual or a creepy urban legend. Never click, searching, forbidden place. They were words that were too easy to ignore. And the results came up faster than I expected. There it was in front of me. an encrypted link, just as the author had described. I felt a chill in the air, like something had shifted, but I clicked anyway. The screen went black for a moment, and when it came back, I was no longer on the dark web. I was somewhere else entirely. The site looked almost like a standard web page at first, nothing particularly out of the ordinary. But the deeper I scrolled, the more I realized something was off. The text was disjointed, broken up with strange symbols and lines that didn't make any sense. The further I navigated, the more I could feel a sense of unease settling over me. And then I found it. The message. It was short and simple. "Welcome, I've been waiting for you." I froze. My heart pounded in my chest. I told myself it was some kind of elaborate prank, but the feeling that washed over me told me otherwise. This was something else. This wasn't a website. It wasn't a prank. I felt it in the pit of my stomach. I should have closed the window right then and there. But curiosity got the best of me. I clicked the next link, and that's when things started to spiral out of control. The page loaded with a loud noise, a sudden, deep hum that rattled my bones. The entire screen blinked once, twice before it stabilized. But now I was no longer in control. My mouse moved on its own, the cursor dragging itself across the screen, clicking through pages without me doing a thing. The images were jarring. I saw faces. People, their eyes wide, their mouths open in screams, but none of them made a sound. Just images that weren't meant to be seen. One image caught my attention more than the rest. A black and white photo of a room. It was completely empty, except for a chair in the center. The floor was covered in dust. But on the chair, there was something. A small, black object that looked like a mask. The screen flickered again, and suddenly I was in that room. The chair, the dust, the mask. Everything was there. But now there was a figure sitting in the chair. I couldn't make out its features, but I could feel its presence. It wasn't just a figure, it was something more, something malevolent. I felt it staring at me, even though its eyes were hidden behind the mask. I wanted to close the tab. I wanted to get out of there, but the screen froze, and I was stuck. My heartbeat thundered in my ears as I watched the figure slowly stand up. The chair creaked as it shifted, and then it began to walk toward me. I couldn't move. I couldn't breathe. I didn't want to see what was about to happen, but the figure's movements were slow, deliberate, and its footsteps echoed in the empty room like a death knell. I couldn't escape. I was trapped in this nightmare, unable to disconnect from the website, unable to stop what was happening. Then, just as suddenly as it had started, the page went blank. The humming noise stopped. The screen was black, and I thought I was free. But then came the knocking. It was quiet at first, almost a whisper against the door. But as I got closer, the sound grew louder, more insistent, until it was a pounding on the other side of the door. I stood frozen, not knowing what to do. Who would be knocking at this hour? I glanced at my phone, only to find it was dead, completely unresponsive, even though I knew it had been charged just minutes earlier. I made my way to the door, my mind racing. I shouldn't open it. I shouldn't even be near it. But something pulled me forward. I opened the door. No one was there. I looked down, and that's when I saw it, a small black mask resting on the doorstep, just like the one from the photo. It was identical, smooth, featureless, and somehow wrong. I slammed the door shut, my heart hammering in my chest. But that wasn't the worst part. The whispers began again, but this time they weren't in my head. They were coming from behind the door. I don't know what I found that night. I don't know who or what was waiting for me on that website. But whatever it was, it's still here. I feel it every time I close my eyes. The mask, the whispers, they never stop. I'm trapped in this endless loop, connected to something far darker than I ever could have imagined. If you're reading this, I beg you, don't go looking for the dark web. Don't go looking for things that shouldn't exist, because once you find them, you can never escape. I've learned that the hard way.
Next story.
It's funny how life can change in the blink of an eye, or maybe more accurately, in the click of a mouse. I wasn't one to be scared of much. Sure, I had my share of childhood fears, but as an adult, those things faded away. What could scare someone who had already faced down debt, a dead-end job, and all the nonsense that life throws at you? My biggest concern was finishing my workday, grabbing dinner, and going to bed to start it all over again. But that was before the link. It started on a regular Tuesday, or at least it felt like a regular Tuesday. I was working from home, tired from a late night before, trying to get some reports done for my boss. I wasn't slacking off, but I was definitely distracted. You know how it is when your eyes keep wandering to different tabs, checking your social media or reading random things online to keep you going? And then I saw it. It was a random post in a forum I frequented. It wasn't one of those threads that immediately screamed danger or mystery. It was a link, just a regular, almost unremarkable link to a file. The post just said, "I know what you're looking for." Now, I'm not someone who immediately falls for internet clickbait, but something about the simplicity of it, combined with the words, "I know what you're looking for," felt personal. It felt like whoever posted it knew exactly what I was interested in. I didn't even stop to question why I would click it. I did, and the file opened. At first, it looked like an old text document, nothing out of the ordinary, just a blank page with a line of words written in white, clean font. The sentence was short: "You're not the first one to come here, but you'll be the last." I stared at the text for what felt like forever, a shiver running up my spine. My finger hovered over the mouse, ready to close the file, but then the cursor moved, on its own. The file scrolled down, more text appeared. "I know what you're really searching for. Come find it." A lump formed in my throat. I wasn't sure what I was looking for, but for some reason, I couldn't stop reading. I kept scrolling. The screen blurred, the text changed, and the page transformed in a way that made my heart stop. The words were no longer just random sentences. They were images, distorted, shifting. A dark figure emerged from the pixelated mess. It was blurry, like a glitch, but I could see the outline clearly enough. A tall, hunched silhouette, the face obscured by a hood, standing still in a dark room, the edges of the figure flickering. A sick feeling twisted in my stomach. Something was wrong, terribly wrong. Before I could move my hand to close the window, the figure in the image tilted its head, slowly, as if it was noticing me for the first time. And then, the words changed again. "I've been waiting for you. Come closer." I slammed the laptop shut, heart racing, palms sweaty. But when I opened it again, the screen wasn't blank. The file had opened again, and it was already scrolling. The same image was there. And now I could hear something, a soft whisper like it was coming from inside the screen itself. I wasn't sure what was going on, but every instinct in my body screamed at me to disconnect. I tried to pull up the task manager to close the browser, but nothing responded. My laptop was frozen, just like my thoughts. The whispering got louder, and then a new line appeared in the file. "You can't escape." I turned off my laptop, my hands shaking, but it was no use. When I powered it back on, the screen was the same, blank, but the whispers were louder, more desperate now. "You belong to me." I could feel the air in my apartment get heavier, like something was closing in on me. I sat there, frozen. I couldn't look away from the screen, no matter how hard I tried. My body felt numb, but my mind was on fire, racing to comprehend what I was seeing, hearing, feeling. "Don't look behind you." I blinked. The text had changed again, but this time the words felt too real, like a command. My heart pounded in my chest. I didn't want to, but I couldn't help myself. I slowly turned my head, glancing over my shoulder. Nothing. I sighed in relief, but the whispers grew louder. They were coming from inside my own head now, filling my ears, drowning out everything else. I tried to close my eyes, tried to block out the sound, but I couldn't. It was like the whispers were crawling into my mind, filling it with dark thoughts. Thoughts that didn't belong to me. "Look again." I opened my eyes, and this time my reflection in the screen wasn't mine. The figure I had seen in the image was there, staring back at me. Its hood was raised, its eyes dark pits of emptiness, and its mouth was twisted into a smile that didn't belong on a human face. I scrambled back, my body colliding with the edge of my desk. My heart was racing. I felt sick, dizzy, like the world was spinning out of control. The figure on the screen moved, slowly rising up from the chair, reaching out toward the screen, its fingers stretching toward me. I wanted to scream, but I couldn't. My voice was gone. The whispers filled the room, loud and deafening. "You're not getting away this time." And then, the figure's hand broke through the screen. The fingers scraped against the edges of my vision. I felt them tug at my hair, cold and thin. It was pulling me toward the screen. I tried to stand, to run, but my body was frozen. My legs wouldn't move. The screen flickered once more, and the figure's face was right in front of me, pressing against the glass. Its smile grew wider, and the words that filled my mind weren't whispers anymore, they were commands. You're mine. In that moment, I understood. This wasn't just some random file. It wasn't a prank or a glitch. It was a gateway, a doorway, and I had crossed through it. I tried to fight back, tried to push the laptop away, but it was no use. The world around me seemed to crumble as my vision blurred. And then, darkness. I woke up hours later, disoriented. My laptop was still open in front of me, the screen dim, but the whispering was gone. The room was silent. But I knew what had happened. I knew that I had made a mistake, a terrible mistake, clicking that link. The figure was still with me, lingering in the shadows of my mind, its presence never far away. I couldn't escape. I couldn't shake it off. I was trapped. And as I sat there, trying to make sense of it all, a message popped up on my screen. You'll be the last one to find the way out. Just remember one thing, don't look back.
Next story.
It started as a simple curiosity. I'd heard the rumors about the dark web, how it was a place filled with illegal activities, deep web markets, and dark secrets. But somewhere along the way, I began to wonder, what if there were darker things? Things not meant for the light of day? What if there were places on the dark web that weren't filled with criminals, but with something much worse? The kind of things that sent shivers down your spine. I've always had a fascination with horror stories, but even I wasn't prepared for what I would discover. One night, while scrolling through some obscure Reddit threads, I found a mention of a website called The Quiet. The thread didn't have much to it, just a few scattered comments about how disturbing the website was. I thought it was another one of those fake creepypasta-style stories, just meant to get a reaction. But then came the link. I stared at it for a long time. I could feel the temptation pulling at me. I'd always been drawn to things that made my pulse race. Ghost stories, true crime documentaries, the kinds of things that made me look over my shoulder when I was alone. So, I clicked on the link. I wish I hadn't. It was a simple page, like something from an old website. The background was pitch black, the text written in stark white letters that flickered every few seconds. It was almost unreadable, but I could make out the words, "Enter quietly." There was no indication of what I was about to walk into. No descriptions, no directions, just that eerie invitation. My heart was already beating faster, but the curiosity won out. I clicked enter. The screen went black. Then, without warning, a video began to play. It was a single shaky shot of a man standing in what appeared to be an abandoned building. The camera was held low to the ground, and the man, dressed in tattered clothing, was staring directly into the lens. His face was gaunt, his skin pale. His eyes were wide, unblinking, as though he hadn't slept in days. He didn't speak, but I could hear something. A soft hum, a constant buzzing noise that seemed to reverberate in the back of my skull. I told myself it was nothing, a prank, a glitch in the video. But then, the camera tilted up and panned across the room. At first, I didn't see anything, just walls covered in dark stains, broken windows letting in little light. But then, there it was, a figure standing at the far end of the room. It was tall, unnaturally tall, with a pale, featureless face. Its arms hung limp at its sides, and it made no movement, no sound. But as the camera zoomed in, I could see its eyes, black, endless voids, like there was nothing behind them. I froze. The man in the video started moving towards the figure. His footsteps echoed through the abandoned space, and with each step, I felt like something was drawing closer to me, too. I couldn't explain it, but I felt a growing sense of dread, like the room around me was closing in. The man reached the figure, but just as he extended a hand, the screen flickered again. The video cut out, and I was left staring at a black screen. The hum had stopped, and in its place, I heard something else. Soft whispers, like voices coming from the farthest corners of my mind. Leave now. I couldn't breathe. I knew I should have clicked away. I knew I should have shut down my computer and never looked back. But instead, I stayed. I thought, maybe it was a trick. Maybe I had imagined the whole thing. Then the text appeared on the screen. It's too late. Before I could even process what it meant, the screen flickered again, and the next thing I saw was something far worse. I was staring at myself. Not the reflection of myself in a mirror, but a video of me, sitting at my desk, exactly as I was at that very moment. My heart pounded in my chest. How could this be? I was alone in my room, and yet there it was, a video feed of me watching the screen, my face illuminated by the glow of the computer. I should have turned off the computer. I should have stood up, walked away, and never looked back. But I couldn't. My eyes were glued to the screen. The video zoomed in on my face. I could see my own expression, my wide eyes, my anxious breathing. But then something strange happened. My reflection blinked, and then it smiled. But it wasn't my smile. It was a twisted, contorted version of it. The corners of my lips stretching too far, the eyes narrowing unnaturally. I recoiled from the screen, feeling like I was about to be sucked into it. The next image flashed so quickly I almost missed it, but I caught just enough. The same figure from the abandoned room now standing right behind me. I whipped around in my chair, but no one was there. The room was empty, just as it had been before. My heart thudded in my chest and my breath became shallow. The video continued. It showed me, but this time I was no longer alone in my room. A shadow loomed behind me, just out of sight. The whispers grew louder, the words more distinct. "Come to us." I wanted to scream, to rip the computer out of the wall, but I was paralyzed with fear. The figure from the video stepped forward again. Slowly. It was behind me, and the thing that terrified me most was the fact that I knew, deep down, that this wasn't some prank, some computer glitch. This wasn't a fake video, it was something real. "Your turn is next." The video cut out, and I was left staring at my own empty room. The whispers were gone, but I could still feel their presence in the air. That night, I couldn't sleep. I lay in bed, eyes wide open, staring at the shadows in the corners of the room. I kept hearing things. Soft knocks, a scratching sound at the door. Every time I tried to turn over, I saw something, just a flicker at the edge of my vision. A tall figure, its face hidden in the dark. I don't know how long I stayed awake, but eventually exhaustion took over. I drifted into a restless sleep, and that's when it happened. I woke up to a soft, cold hand on my shoulder. I turned, but there was nothing there. The room was still empty. The lights were off, but the coldness remained. I haven't been able to get rid of the feeling. The figure is still out there, waiting. I don't know how much longer I can keep pretending I'm not being watched. Maybe it's already too late, maybe it's already found me. And now I can't even look at my own reflection without wondering if that twisted smile is still there.
Next story.
I always thought horror was something meant to be enjoyed in small doses, a thrill to keep your heart racing. It was the kind of thing I'd watch with friends on a Friday night, huddled in blankets, popcorn in hand, jumping at every jump scare. I never thought I'd end up living through a real nightmare, one that had nothing to do with movies or fake monsters. But here I am, telling you this story from the confines of my room, my only company, the sound of my own shaking breath. It all began on a regular evening. I was at home, scrolling through my phone, trying to kill time before I went to bed. My friends had all been talking about something new, some kind of challenge that was circulating around social media. You know how these things go. One person posts something creepy, and suddenly everyone's jumping in. At first, I thought it was just another gimmick. But the more I read, the more intrigued I became. This one was different. It was a challenge called the mirror game. Simple enough. The rules went like this. 1. Stand in front of a mirror at midnight. 2. Close your eyes and repeat "I'm here" 3 times. 3. The rest is a surprise. Sounds stupid, right? I thought it was a dumb prank. But as I kept reading, something inside me clicked. There was a small part of my brain that wanted to test it to see if the stories were true. I mean, how bad could it be? It's just a mirror, right? People were even posting about it, claiming they'd seen something strange or heard whispers after trying it. And that's when I made the decision. I wasn't going to let it bother me. It was just a stupid game, after all. That night, as the clock ticked closer to midnight, I stood in front of my bathroom mirror. The house was quiet, just the hum of the refrigerator in the other room and the faint creak of the floorboards under my feet. I could feel the cool air from the open window brushing against my skin. I told myself it would be easy. I closed my eyes, took a deep breath, and whispered the words, "I'm here," 3 times. I waited. The room felt unnervingly still, but there was nothing. No sudden chill, no whisper in the air, no strange sensation creeping down my spine. For a few seconds, I felt a weird sense of disappointment. That was it? I was supposed to be scared, but all I felt was a little foolish. I was about to open my eyes when I heard something. It was soft at first, like the flutter of something against the back of my neck. My eyes snapped open. The reflection in the mirror wasn't mine. I know that sounds insane. It's the kind of thing you laugh about later with your friends, saying you saw something weird and brush it off. But I didn't laugh. I couldn't. The figure in the mirror was almost identical to me, but there were subtle differences. Its face was gaunt, with hollow eyes that stared back at me. It looked wrong. Its lips were stretched into an unnaturally wide smile, but the smile didn't reach its eyes. The worst part, its reflection was moving, shifting in ways I wasn't. I froze. It tilted its head, almost as if it were studying me, and then it raised one hand, slowly, deliberately, and it pointed at me. I couldn't move. I couldn't scream. I could only stare at the reflection, my heart pounding in my chest. The figure in the mirror moved its mouth, but no sound came out. It looked like it was saying something, its lips mouthing the words, but I couldn't hear anything. It was as if something else, something much darker, was trapped behind the glass, watching me, mimicking me. But then the reflection started to laugh, a deep, guttural laugh that chilled me to my core. That was when I ran. I didn't care how ridiculous it was or how I would explain it to anyone. I just knew I had to get out of that bathroom. I turned away from the mirror and bolted out of the room. I locked the door behind me, panting, my heart hammering in my chest. I sat in my bedroom for hours, staring at the bathroom door. The house was silent again. I didn't dare go back to the bathroom to check the mirror. I didn't even want to look at it. But I had a feeling deep in my gut that whatever I had seen wasn't over. It wasn't just a hallucination. It was waiting. Over the next few days, the strange occurrences didn't stop. At first, it was small things. A faint scraping sound behind me, as if someone was dragging their fingers across the walls when I wasn't looking. Then it became worse. Every time I passed the bathroom mirror, I saw it. The reflection wasn't mine. It was the thing I'd seen, lurking just beyond the glass, watching me, smiling that same awful grin. I knew it was there. I could feel its eyes on me, even if I wasn't looking directly at the mirror. I tried everything. I covered the mirror with a towel, locked the bathroom door, but nothing worked. I would go to sleep, exhausted, only to wake up in the middle of the night to the sound of soft breathing from the bathroom. When I'd get up to check, the mirror would be bare, nothing on the other side. But I could feel it. I could feel it in the silence of the house, in the air that seemed to weigh heavier each day. Then, one morning, I woke up to find something even worse. The mirror had been cracked, a long, jagged line cutting through the reflection of my face. It was as if something had reached out from the other side and broken it. But the worst part, the reflection of me was no longer smiling. No, it was looking back at me with a blank expression, as if it knew something I didn't. That's when I realized the truth. The mirror game wasn't just a game. It wasn't some stupid challenge or prank. It was real. And whatever was in that mirror, it wasn't done with me. It wanted something from me. It wanted to take me. I've tried everything to stop it. I've covered the mirror, I've moved the mirror out of the bathroom, and I've even tried to destroy it. But no matter what, it keeps coming back. And I'm starting to feel like maybe it's not just the mirror anymore. Maybe it's following me, watching me. Every time I look into any reflective surface now, I feel its presence, the cold, empty eyes staring back at me. It's waiting for me to make one more mistake, to say the words again. And this time I won't be able to run.